The way in which I addressed the team Monday was that, not that there was anything real positive about Saturday's game, but the thing I didn't expect was that we played really hard. And the effort, we grade pursuit. 90, by way of example, 93% is what we demand on defense, usually when you pursue at that level. And I would say this year, it's probably happened in 75% of our games, which is probably better than normal. But the effort was there, but our execution was really poor, and for whatever reason, and I thought all three phases after the game were dismal. Special teams was really above average. They weren't great. They didn't dominate the way we had in the previous three games, but they did a lot of good things too. The punt netted 45, it netted 41. We had Poocher kicks to the -12 and the -8. Punt return, fortunately for us, they punted against to win twice. Did not want a quasi to get the ball. They had net punts at 22 and 29. Our kickoff only had one, which is not a good sign, but it was inside the 30. Our kickoff return was below average for us. We actually had initial line of scrimmage -37, -40 because of a kick out of bounds, but we had two that were -28, -23. And then we practice every week with exactly 12 seconds hurry up to kick a field goal when you don't have a timeout. And we had exactly 12 seconds on the clock, and I think we had 2 seconds when it was snapped. But then we had a bad snap and hold and missed another scoring opportunity. The block unit got some good pressure. We did decline the one penalty to keep him at a tough angle, and he missed it. But they also faked the initial PAT for 2 points. It wasn't a muff; it was a fake. And so overall, in special teams, we were above average, but certainly not great. And I just expressed to them our need this week was commitment for 5 days to each other, and to work on the execution that we're so poor at. And I told him a quick story of Brady James, who was Player of the Year in the state of Louisiana, a kid I recruited out of Monroe. And I thought he might be the 4th Butkus Award winner I had. He ended up being a 5th-round draft choice, which I thought was much lower than he should have gone, and is a heck of a player today. But what I explained to him was Brady said that the biggest difference in the NFL is it's number one, it's a job, it's not as much fun. But at LSU, there were 4 or 5 games, Florida, Auburn, Alabama, that you were just jacked to play. And then there were others that were harder. Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Houston, whatever it was. He said the difference in the NFL is that now I'm playing 20 games. And he said there are probably 2 or 3 that I really get jacked to play like I did at LSU. But the difference is execution always gives you the chance to win. And as a professional, if you don't execute, you're not going to perform well. So that was just to emphasize that this week we certainly have to execute better. We have no chance of beating anybody. And obviously, with the last game, we need our guys to commit to doing the right things. Offensively and defensively, I didn't think either one executed well. By far the worst offensive line play that we've had this year. The defensive line didn't get knocked off the ball as much as I had thought. We had some instances where we had some smaller guys getting double teamed, but by and large, they maintained the line of scrimmage, but we did not have good gap control. And why it happened in that game as opposed to others, I don't know. I can't tell you. But we had a lot of guys who were just in the wrong gaps. In terms of our weekly awards, prep special teams, James Johnson, going to be an exciting player next year. He may be one of the few running backs I've had who will play some special teams, block units. That's right. He reminds me a little bit of, I don't know if you remember Alonzo Roebuck. We had it at Edinburgh. And Alonzo was, our leading blocker on punt. But he's got some real acceleration. Prep offense was Stefan Canto, neat walk-on kid who's really made some plays in special teams, but he's an important prep guy for us. And then Ross Nicholson, again, a defense kid from Kane. Special teams player of the game was Carlos Jeter. He was 19 for 19 with 2 tackles. And this is the guy who played the majority of the field plays. We did not have any ROTC player of the game. There was no one that we felt played well enough for that honor. And we gave Nate George the Coaching for Life award for last week. Captains for Kutztown, special teams are Carlos Jeter. Offensively is Javon Rowan. And defensively, Mark Jackson. Mark actually played a pretty good game last week. Just wasn't challenged as much. And uniquely, the character quality for this week, and probably one of the best presentations we've had all year, was by Bernie McGowan on execution. Kutztown is 3-7. Beat St. Anselm's, beat Clarion the second game of the year, 25-6. Beat Cheney, but they have really been competitive until last week. They lost to Ship by 4. They lost in overtime to East Stroudsburg. They lost the next week in 2 overtimes to Millersville. And lost to CBA Post 42-17. CBA Post may be the most improved team in the East. I think they're 5-5 now. They're really on top of almost all the offensive charts. Kutztown made a significant change right after the Bloomsburg game and changed quarterbacks. And the Morton kid is really doing a nice job for them. And they have changed their offense dramatically from last year. There's hardly any reason for us to look at last year's tape. They are mostly 10 personnel, 1 back, no tight end. So they'll be 2x2 with 1 back, 3x1 with 1 back, and then they are, the majority of the time, they're an empty. They'll have 3 wide receivers to one side, 2 to the other, and they're one of the few people who will go to quads, 4 on one side, 1 on the other. And it's a throw it around game. They will go to some 2-back, and then they become, I think in their 10 personnel, they've probably run the ball less than 10% of the time. And when they go to 20 personnel, 2 backs, no tight ends, they're more 50-50 team. That's really where they get most of their running game from. But they've done a nice job. Defensively, they are similar to Gannon in a lot of ways. I mean, they play basically one front and a handful of coverages, and they're going to make you knock them off the ball.